Chapter 3. The Feast at New Dawn. The fires at the Golden Conclave's temporary camp burned bright across the valley, their glow visible even from the far watch ridges where the Golden Conclave Knights had raised their banners. The air was thick with the scent of pine smoke, roasted meats, and the faint sweetness of mead. The nameless village, little more than a scattering of cottages and barns, surrounded by a wooden outer wall and maintained by a few guarded sentries that morning, had become a fortress of light by nightfall. Once enclosed by a timber palisade, its sharpened stakes weathered by years of wind and rain, it now gleamed with new life. The Conclave's engineers had reinforced the wall with bracing beams and iron bindings, turning the humble barrier into a bulwark fit for knights. Rows of tents lined the southern slope, each marked with the sigil of the sunburst crown. Wardstones had been driven into the earth at the perimeter, glowing faintly with protective runes that shimmered like fireflies in the dark. Watchtowers were erected overnight and stood at multiple corners of the camp, each manned by a pair of knights and a mage. To the north, near the river's bend, the stables had been raised, broad, temporary structures of timber and canvas that sheltered nearly 500 horses, both war mounts and caravan beasts. The air there was thick with the scent of hay and sweat, the steady rhythm of hooves echoing like a heartbeat through the night. The Conclave's squires worked tirelessly, brushing down the steeds, tending to their armor, and ensuring every saddle and bridle was cleaned and ready. Water and provisions had been secured with equal care. The river was dammed upstream to create a clean reservoir, guarded by sentries at all hours. Barrels of grain, dried fruit, and salted meat were stacked in neat rows beside the command tent, marked for rationing. Though the knights had settled in, their order and precision made clear that their stay would be brief. Beyond the perimeter, the villagers worked beside the soldiers, their fear replaced with a kind of reverent awe. They had seen each conclave fight in protection of their village, and the Imperial Knight had placed their own life on the line for this simple people. Now, as the danger passed, gratitude spilled from them like wine from an overfilled cup. And wine there was, plenty of it. From cellars and hidden stores, the villagers brought forth ales and spirits long saved for winter, their corks popping like musket fire as they poured for the knights. Barrels of honey mead, casks of dark stout, and bottles of spiced brandy were rolled into the square. Laughter rose, wild and unrestrained, as the people toasted their saviors. "To the Golden Conclave," someone cried. "To the Dawn Guard," shouted another. "To Prince Alarion." The cheer that followed shook the very air. Prince Alarion stood before the great bonfire, a long trestle table set behind him, and the night alive with flame and song. His transformation had left him half-clad, his chest bare where armor had once gleamed, his feet unshod from the heat that had melted his boots. The villagers, in their kindness, had offered him what they could: a tattered long-sleeved shirt and a pair of straw sandals. He had tucked the humble shirt into the gleaming belt of his remaining armor, the coarse fabric bunching awkwardly against the polished metal. The contrast was striking, an emperor's heir dressed in the remnants of battle and the charity of peasants. His hair caught the firelight like a halo, and though his appearance was mismatched and strange, there was something quietly noble in it. He smiled faintly as the villagers pressed forward, offering him cups of mead, loaves of bread, and garlands of wildflowers. "To Prince Alarion," a farmer bellowed, raising his mug high. "To the savior of this humble village." The cheer that followed rolled through the square like thunder. Name it after him, someone cried. Let it be called the Roaring Dawn. Alarion's light, came another voice. Emperor's light, shouted one of the elders, for he fights as though the Emperor's own hand guides him. A woman near the fires lifted her mug and called, Alarion's home! Let this place be where his legend rests. The prince raised a hand, and the noise fell away. The firelight flickered across his face, revealing an expression both calm and weary. Fame is not my purpose, he said quietly. You owe me no monument. Name your home for what you have become, further united as one. The villagers murmured among themselves, uncertain. Then a boy stepped forward, his tunic too large for his thin frame. It was young Percival in his nicest tunic with bright eyes and a voice that carried. Then call it New Dawn, he said softly, because we begin again. The crowd went silent. Then, one by one, they nodded. The name spread through the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. New Dawn, they said. New Dawn. And so it was. The celebration lasted deep into the night. Music filled the square. Pipes, drums, and the rhythmic clatter of tankards on tables. Knights and villagers danced together, their laughter echoing through the hills. Children ran between the tents, chasing sparks from the bonfires. The conclave's war horses relaxed, their armor removed, their manes brushed and braided by giggling girls and leery squires. The conclave cooks worked tirelessly, stirring cauldrons of victory stew made from meat of the cattle that had perished from the goblins. They made a rich broth of beef, onions, and wild herbs thickened with barley and red wine. Platters of roasted fowl and honeyed bread passed hand to hand, and the air grew heavy with the scent of feasting. The knights of the Golden Conclave smiled and drank, but their eyes often drifted toward the dark horizon. The wardstones pulsed faintly, their light steady but cold. They had fought bravely, yes, but the memory of what had come after the goblins still haunted them. Merry Bright, the elven warrior mage who had once stood against their ancient heroes of the First Plague War, his name whispered only in dread. He had appeared before them, not as a corpse of legend, but as a living storm of power. Tonight they danced and enjoyed their newfound liberty. The Golden Conclave were their heroes brought to life in deed and honored until the night ended and dawn approached. As the fires burned low and the villagers slept, the dawn guard gathered beneath a broad canvas pavilion at the camp's edge. The beginning beams of dawn started to trickle upwards from the horizon, piercing the camp with sunlight. The dawn guard sat in silence, eating an early meal of eggs, sausage, and a revitalization draft that fizzed faintly with the taste of blueberries and lilac. More restorative than any brewed coffee or tea. When consumed, it revitalized the body and mind completely. None of them could sleep that night. Strange, murmured Sir Vale, turning his cup in his hands. We win a battle without loss, yet I feel no peace. Victory seldom brings it, said Sir Sage, the minstrel knight. He leaned back against a post, his lute resting across his knees. The soul remembers what the body survives. Sir Vale's jaw tightened. We survived him, and that's what haunts me. He played with us. Sir Sage's eyes flickered toward the tent's entrance, where the wind whispered faintly through the canvas. What? Like dressed you up with strings and played you like a marionette? Of course not, you fool, said Sir Vale, as he threw a piece of debris from the floor at Sir Sage. Hey, stop that, yelled Sir Sage. The piece of stone bounced off Sage's chest plate and returned to the floor. If he wanted, we would all be dead, Sir Ironwood said. No man or elf moves so easily, not one who bends light and shadow like that. The others said nothing. The silence between them was heavy, filled with the unspoken truth. Merry Bright had utterly bested them all. Sir Sage lifted his lute. Then let us remember what came before him, he said softly, so we may know what comes next. He began to play. The melody was soft at first, a haunting tune that drifted through the tent like mist. The others looked up, listening. It was the song of Mercurius and the Plague King, an ancient ballad of light and corruption. The notes carried the weight of centuries, of battles fought and lost, of heroes who had become monsters. From tombs of plague the dark winds came. The king of rot in soul and name, he whispered death through mortal dreams and tore the world at shadowed seams. When evil follows, the talisman rings, clink, clank, goes the warning it brings. Clink, clink, the evil dread, the plague king wakes, the world turns red. He entered hearts, he seized the mind, and heroes fell, their fates entwined. Tesoro green and Taurus brave, now rest beneath the plague wind's grave. When evil follows, the talisman rings. Clink, clank, goes the warning it brings. Clink, clink, the evil dread, the plague king wakes, the world turns red. Then Merry Bright, the elven flame, a warrior mage of deathless fame, was turned by whispers dark and cold, his heart now bound in shadow's hold. When evil follows, the talisman rings, clink, clank, goes the warning it brings. Clink, clink, the evil dread, the plague king wakes, the world turns red. He rose as plague's immortal hand, a tyrant second in the land. His power vast, his mercy gone. He served the king, yet sought the throne. When evil follows, the talisman rings, clink, clank, goes the warning it brings. Clink, clink, the evil dread, the plague king wakes, the world turns red. But Mercurius of holy flame cried, Light of Valoria, guard thy name! He faced the king in mirror's glare, and shattered night beyond repair. When evil follows, the talisman rings. Clink, clank, goes the warning it brings. Clink, clink, the evil dread, the plague king wakes. The world turns red. The mirror broke. The plague was slain, yet shards of shadow still remain. And Merry Bright, now lost to sin, still haunts the dark where songs begin. When evil follows, the talisman rings, clink, clank, goes the warning it brings. Clink, clink, the evil dread, the plague king wakes, the world turns red. Now mortals wear the shards once cursed, their totems hum with hunger's thirst, and sorry be the souls who drown. For heroes rise to strike them down. When evil follows, the talisman rings, clink, clank, goes the warning it brings. Clink, clink, the evil dread, the plague king wakes, the world turns red. As he set down his lute, his final comment revealed his inner thoughts. I always thought this was a long dead story and not a possibility of today. The tent feels so very silent. The fire outside crackled softly, echoing the rhythm of the song's refrain inside their thoughts. The flap of the tent stirred, and a figure entered. Tall, regal, and in new armor, clean and polished. Prince Alarion stepped into the light, his presence quiet but commanding. The Dawn Guard rose to their feet at once, armor clinking in unison. "At ease," he said, his voice calm but carrying easily across the camp. He looked around at his weary knights, the remnants of their meals scattered across the table, the faint shimmer of potion still swirling in their cups. Sir Sage, ever the one to break tension, leaned back in his chair with a grin. "I see you've changed, my prince." A ripple of laughter moved through the group. Prince Alarion's hand moved instinctively to his chest, brushing the new plate that gleamed where a tattered shirt had hung the night before. "Yes," he said dryly. "The carriages finally arrived with my armor. I must admit, I looked rather ridiculous last night. Party on the top, business on the bottom." The knights burst into laughter, the sound echoing warmly through the night air. Prince Alarion allowed himself a small smile before shaking his head. "A prince of the realm," he murmured, "reduced to a mullet of fashion." The laughter lingered as Alarion moved closer to the fire, brushing dew from his cloak. "I take it the lack of sleep was typical for everyone?" he asked. Sir Craig groaned. "Sleep? The only one prince sleeping is Paraxis." Alarion chuckled, shaking his head. "Aye, the mighty Paraxis, who decided the best place to rest was the ridge above camp. I swear, his snoring echoes through the valley like a dying dragon. I'm surprised anyone manages to sleep." Sir Bruce raised his mug. "I thought it was thunder." Sir Sage laughed. "I thought it was the goblins marching again." Sir Craig added, "I thought it was Bruce's stomach." The tent erupted in laughter as Prince Alarion took a seat by the fire, the warmth casting soft light across his face. "Next time," he said, "someone tell our loyal dragon that sleeping on a ridge doesn't make him mysterious. It just makes him loud." The laughter rolled on, warm, easy, and real, the kind born from shared exhaustion and victory. The fire crackled, and beyond the tent walls, the sounds of nature carried through the night. "They call their little village New Dawn now," Prince Alarion said quietly, his gaze drifting toward the distant glow. "A fitting name." Sir Craig bowed his head. "A new dawn for them, perhaps. For us, the night still lingers." Prince Alarion's expression hardened slightly. "They lost only 3 of their people," he said. "Or villagers, whatever we call them. Too mangled or too far gone for our healers to bring back. Some of those we did save or return to life were previously being killed while being eaten alive. Some were torn pretty bad, and others had expired when we found them." He exhaled slowly, his voice low. "They'll carry those mental scars, but they'll recover. In time." The knights nodded in solemn agreement. The fire popped, sending sparks into the air. For several minutes, no one spoke. They ate, they drank, and they sat together in the quiet understanding that victory always came at a cost. Sir Craig, ever the loudest, stood first, his grin wide and unrepentant. "Typically, my prince, we come in and we kick the booty." He threw his hands up, tracing an exaggerated shape in the air. "A fine, round, sturdy booty, ever so plump and supple, ripe for kicking." He mimed a heroic kick, nearly toppling his stool in the process. The tent erupted with laughter. Sir Sage nearly spilled his drink, and even stoic Sir Bruce was forced to hide a smile behind his mug. Sir Craig continued, undeterred. But yesterday, even though we won, I swear our booties got kicked. Prince Alarion's amusement faded. His gaze darkened as the laughter died down. That man in black. He toyed with us, he said. I haven't seen power like that from any monster or terror we've faced before. If he's truly who I think he is, Mary Bright, then the tales were wrong. The Plague King's servants were supposed to have perished with him. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Alarion's smile had vanished entirely, replaced by a look of quiet reflection. Yes, he said softly. I fear I gave up my power too soon. I thought the battle was over. He fought with such ferocity. We looked like children before him. No one spoke. Hindsight was always cruel. What could have been? What should have been? For a moment, the tent was still. The only sounds were the crackle of the fire and the faint clink of armor as the knights resumed their breakfast in silence, each lost in thought. Then Sir Sage, chewing noisily on a sausage, broke the silence. "Why is it," he said while chewing, "villains always summon the ugliest, stinkiest, most vile creatures of the night?" He waved the sausage like a wand for emphasis. Putrid zombies, sulfur-reeking wraiths, greasy goblins, sweaty orcs, and not even the interesting kind of goblins. No, we get the ones that smell like wet, moldy socks and have teeth like broken glass. A few chuckles rippled through the tent, but Sir Sage was only getting started. He stood, pacing dramatically, sausage still in hand, like a scepter of complaint. Would it kill one of these dark lords to summon something pleasant for once? He declared. Maybe a few buxom maidens, blonde, brunette, I'm not picky, with low-cut dresses, plenty of cleavage, eyes like sapphires or emeralds, something that makes a man want to fight heroically. Sir Craig groaned. "Here we go!" But Sir Sage was already in full performance mode. He drew an imaginary sword and began slashing at invisible foes. "Oh no!" he cried, staggering backward. "There are too many gorgeous ladies. They're ganging up on me." He tripped over a stool, crashed backward onto the table, and flailed his legs in the air. "They're upon me! The kisses! With tongue!" he shouted, clutching his chest in mock agony. "I can't fight them off. They're everywhere." The tent exploded in laughter. Sir Sage rolled off the table, landed on one knee, and gave an exaggerated bow. "Now that," he said, grinning, "I could handle." Prince Alarion was laughing, shaking his head. "Sage, if the day ever comes when the enemy sends maidens instead of monsters," he said, "I'll make sure you lead the charge." Laughter rolled through the tent again, louder this time, rich, unrestrained, and much needed. The Dawn Guard had a habit, one that outsiders found both fascinating and absurd. Between battles, they constantly checked their levels and status, as if their worth could be measured as competition. A typical man might reach level 9 or 10 in his lifetime, enough to hold a sword, plow a field, or fend off a wolf if fate demanded. Those who trained with discipline, soldiers and guards, could climb as high as level 20. Troops and warriors in the service of Valoria, who lived by the blade and bled for their cause, sometimes broke into the 40s, their names whispered with awe. And then there were the Imperial Knights of Valoria. Chosen, blessed, and battle-hardened, they stood far beyond mortal measure. Their levels were not just numbers. They were living proof of devotion, sacrifice, and the divine favor of the crown. Among them were the heroes, those born with latent heroic potential, marked by destiny itself. Such individuals often awakened divine gifts, rare blessings that sharpened their strength, heightened their senses, or granted powers beyond the reach of ordinary men. When the noise finally settled, Prince Alarion raised his palm. A faint blue icon shimmered above it, the glowing crest of his status mark. "Level 96, he said with a small smile. 2 levels gained since yesterday. Sir Bruce leaned forward, squinting at the light. "So that means I'm the weakest in the group." Sir Sage and Sir Craig immediately flanked him, clapping him on the shoulders. "Come on, Bruce," Sir Sage said with a grin. "Open yours up. Let's see what the numbers say." Sir Bruce sighed but raised his palm. His own mark flickered to life, a deep amber hue with runes circling the number 74. Sir Sage squinted dramatically, leaning closer. "Wait, are you sure it's showing? I can barely see it from here." Sir Craig joined in, pretending to shade his eyes. "Maybe it's just really small. You know, like his level." Laughter rippled among the group, light and genuine. Sir Bruce groaned, shoving them both away. "Ha ha ha ha. Very funny. Keep laughing when I hit 75 and smash you both into the dirt." Prince Alarion chuckled, lowering his hand slightly. "Everyone bears a mark like this, a reflection of what we've earned. Each number, each trait, is a record of who we are. Strength, speed, intellect, dexterity, wisdom, vitality, all measured and bound by the mark." Sir Sage pointed his fork directly at Sir Craig. "So when I say I'm stronger than Craig, I can prove it." Sir Craig scoffed. "You can try to prove it, but sometimes numbers aren't the whole story." More laughter followed, the kind that came easily after battle. Prince Alarion's tone softened. "It's more than pride. The status mark grows with us. Through battle, through study, through every choice we make. It's the kingdom's way of keeping record of our growth and our limits." He lowered his hand, the glow fading away. "Even so, I've yet to reach 106. Perhaps then I'll be worthy to stand beside Knight Almond." Captain Lysandra, seated near the fire, took a slow sip of her potion. "Assuming Knight Almond makes it back tonight," she said dryly. "The Baron of these lands demanded negotiations and approvals for even us to take a dump. You'd think he'd remember who guards his people and saved his borders." Sir Sage snorted. "If we hadn't been here, this place would have been crawling with goblins by now." And with a small smile continued, "You know, stinky, smelly, and with the tiniest hint of urine-smelling goblins." The group gave an eye roll almost in unison. Prince Alarion nodded. "True. Kurt is a savage negotiator. Being the son of emissaries definitely rubbed off on him. He always just seems to get negotiations done." And as he stopped to look at the group, "Even when it's against the most annoying noble who you really just want to clobber." He paused, his gaze distant as he changed thoughts. "Speaking of nobles, I need to return to the capital and report back to my father. Mary Bright, if he is indeed alive and collaborating with monsters. This is a grave fact, one that impacts our national security. My thoughts keep coming back to how I must visit the Luminarium. There's counsel I need from Mercurius at the Solar Heart. We are going to need to have a very serious conversation." Captain Lysandra leaned back, whistling softly. "So, we're heading back to the capital to report to your father?" Prince Alarion shook his head. "Not yet. I still need you all here. Whatever power drew us to these faraway lands, it's not gone. We need it found." Sir Ironward leaned forward with a grin. "And perhaps you're planning to visit a certain noble's daughter?" Long black hair, green eyes, and a figure that could make a sculptor weep? Someone you've known since childhood, perhaps? Sir Craig smirked. Ah, the same maiden who swoons every time the prince transforms in battle, from shining armor to bare-chested hero. He stood dramatically, puffing out his chest. Tell me, Your Highness, do you have to go from noble prince to half-naked demigod every time you transform? He mimed tearing off his shirt with exaggerated flair, chest pumped forward, standing regal with his hands resting against his hips. Laughter rippled through the group, echoing off the canvas walls. Sir Bruce thumped his chest plate. Seriously, is there any way you can transform without ending up shirtless? You make the rest of us look like barrels. I feel less of a man every time you do it. Prince Alarion doubled over, laughing, wiping tears from his eyes. I won't lie, he said between chuckles. I do get nervous around Lady Marilyn. My palms sweat more than they do in battle, and I forget my words. Sir Sage pointed his sausage like a sword. It's always the same. Heroes who slay monsters without blinking can't even talk to a maiden without losing their nerve. Sir Ironwood nodded sagely. Heroes have it backwards. They'll charge a creature that'd make a grown man piss himself, but one smile from a lady of virtue and they're undone. Captain Lysandra smirked. Funny, when he looks at me, he doesn't break a sweat. He just tells me to get back to work. Laughter rolled through the tent again. When it finally faded, Prince Alarion's expression sobered. It took us 7 nights and 8 days of hard riding to reach this place, even with our teleportation to the farthest edges of our lands. And now, just as we near our goal, I may have to turn back. If I leave, we lose time we don't have. A hush again fell over the group. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the distant hum of the wards that encircled their camp. Shadows danced across the worn faces of warriors and mages alike, reflecting exhaustion, fear, and the faintest glimmer of hope. Then Archmage Thalen Dure rose, setting aside his goblet after draining its contents in one large gulp. The air around him shimmered in a swirl of purple and gold, the telltale sign of the effectiveness of the potion. I don't know if it's the potion or the sudden clarity, he said, voice low but steady. But I may have a solution. Prince Alarion straightened, his silver circlet catching the firelight. You now have my full attention, Archmage. Archmage Thalen nodded, his eyes focused. While Piraxis is far friendlier to you and the brothers Trilsh, he and I have spent long nights speaking of the world beyond Valoria. He asks me of our kingdom's customs, and I ask him of Orethis, the lands he has flown over, the peoples he has seen, and the wonders he has witnessed. He has told me of the dwarven airships they use to deliver goods, the speed airships of Mervale, and of the floating citadels of the Skyborn. But more than that, he has shared with me something extraordinary. The others leaned in as Archmage Thalen continued, his tone reverent. He told me that dragons once had a way of reaching the stars themselves, a method of flight so swift and high that they could cross continents in a single night. He once flew from the farthest reaches of the Mervale kingdom to our borders in less than a fortnight. If what he says is true, then perhaps, if we left today, we could reach the capital by nightfall. Alarion's eyes widened. You mean to ride with him? Through the upper skies? Thalen smiled faintly. If he allows it. Since Piraxis gained the radiant power, his abilities have grown beyond what even the oldest of whims recall. He believed he can extend his protection. perhaps even carry another through the thin air of the upper heavens. The group exchanged uneasy glances. The idea of soaring beyond the clouds, where the air turned to ice and the stars seemed within reach, was both wondrous and terrifying. "Let's ask him," Prince Alarion said finally, as the group stood up in unison. "Captain Lysandra, if this plan is to make any semblance of possibility, I need you to send scouts 2 by 2 in round circles of 2 miles per each rider group, in parallel circles every half hour of up to 8 miles. Have them do a circle and come back to check in. We are not going to get caught with our guard down. If we indeed make it quickly to the capital, we will be back as soon as we can." Captain Lysandra nodded in agreement and said, "Already done, my prince," and she left to arrange to the details. Then they all stepped out into the pale dawn. The dragon lay near the edge of camp, his golden scales dulled by sleep, his massive chest rising and falling with slow, thunderous breaths. As they approached, one golden eye cracked open. "Ah!" Peraxis rumbled, stretching his wings with a sound like rolling thunder. "You rise early, little ones. I slept as soundly as a hatchling." "Glad one of us slept," said Sir Craig. Thalen bowed slightly. "We have a question for you, old friend. You once spoke of a way your kind could travel great distances, almost touching the stars." The dragon's eyes gleamed. "Aye. When dragons were many, we would rise higher than the clouds, higher than the storms, until the air turned thin and the world below was but a memory. Up there, the wind itself carries you faster than any airship, but the air is cold and the breath scarce. Only dragons can endure it." Archmage Thalen's hand glowed faintly with golden light. "Perhaps not only dragons. I have a spell, an ancient stasis ward. It can encase a mortal in a shell of protective magic, preserving breath and warmth. If I cast it upon the prince, he could survive the ascent." "Ascent?" questioned Peraxis. "Yes," said Prince Alarion. "With great haste I must return to the capital." The fire burned low, its embers pulsing like the heartbeat of the earth. The camp lay quiet, perched on the edge of the highlands, where the wind carried the scent of frost and smoke. Peraxis loomed above the dying flames, his scales glimmering faintly like molten glass beneath the stars. His eyes, vast, golden, and ancient, watched the mortals in silence. Peraxis said at last, his voice deep as thunder rolling through stone, "You must understand what you ask of me, and of yourselves. The journey to the capital is no simple flight. To cross that distance swiftly, we must climb high, far above the clouds where the air thins and the cold bites like iron. Even my flame struggles there. The frost of the upper winds could freeze a man solid in moments." He turned his gaze toward Prince Alarion, his tone softening but no less grave. "Your kind was not made for such heights. The cold would claim you before the sun reached its zenith. My scales shield me, my inner fire burns hot enough to melt the frost of the heavens. But your flesh, your blood, cannot endure it." Prince Alarion stood tall, his cloak snapping in the mountain wind, his jaw set with the hard edge of resolve. "Then I will be forced to endure it," he said. "We have no time for comfort or caution. Merry Bright is already within the borders of the realm leading an army of goblins as if it was a child's plaything. We saw him with our own eyes." Sir Sage belt out, "Yes, Vale said he was played like a marionette with strings." Sir Vale slapped Sir Sage with the back of his unarmored hand. "I said no such thing, that was you." They began to argue in the background. Prince Alarion stepped closer to his dragon. "That is why we must return to the capital," Alarion said. "Whatever this divine power is that brings us here, Mary Bright seeks it. We have too many questions about this scenario and must seek guidance and counsel." Paraxis's tail lashed once, scattering sparks from the fire. "And yet you would risk your life on the winds of death to reach our city faster. Foolishness. Even young dragons have perished in the upper heights, flying too high and impatient. The cold there devours flame. The sky is not kind to those who defy it." "I do not have the luxury of kindness," Prince Alarion snapped. "I feel speed is of the essence." The dragon's eyes flared with sudden anger. "You would throw your life away for haste? If you die, who will lead them? Who will stand when the trickster comes for your throne?" Prince Alarion stepped even closer, his voice low but fierce. He placed his hand on the dragon's nose. "If I die trying to save them, then I will have done my duty. If I stay here waiting for safety, then I am no prince, only a coward wearing a crown." For a long moment, silence hung between them. The fire crackled softly, the mountain wind sighing through the trees. Then Paraxis exhaled, a long plume of smoke curling into the night air. "You speak with the fire of your ancestors," he said finally, his tone quieter but heavy with respect. "Very well, little prince. I will bear you to your capital. But know this: the sky will strip you bare. The cold will test your will, your magic, and your very soul. If you falter, I may not be able to save you." Prince Alarion's expression softened, though his resolve did not waver. "Then I will not falter." Paraxis turned his gaze toward Thalen, the archmage who had been silent until now. "He will need your craft, mage. Without your wards, he will not survive the climb. You will also need to accompany him." Thalen bowed his head. "I am ready, willing, and waiting." He began gathering supplies from the packs: reins of reinforced leather, coils of silver-threaded rope, and small vials of enchanted oil. "The cold will not be our only enemy," he said. "Once the prince is placed under stasis, his body will grow heavy, anchored by the spell's power. We will need every hand to lift him." Prince Alarion frowned. "Stasis?" Thalen met his gaze. "It is the only way to keep you alive through the upper winds. The spell will halt your breath and heartbeat, preserving you until we reach the capital. You will not feel the cold, nor the passage of time, but it will make you as heavy as stone." Pyraxis snorted, smoke curling from his nostrils. "A clever plan. But the prince will need more than straps to stay upon my back." "I have something better," Thalen said, kneeling in the dirt. He drew a circle of runes that glowed faintly blue in the firelight. "The Adheris Sigil. It binds flesh to scale, scale to magic. Once cast, the prince will be fused to your back, as though he were part of you. The bond will hold until I release it." The dragon tilted his head, intrigued. Ancient magic. Dangerous, if misused. The campfire burned low, its light flickering across the faces of the weary company. The wind from the high peaks carried the scent of snow and salt, whispering through the trees. The preparations for the stasis spell were nearly complete. Archmage Thalen's runes glowed faintly in the dirt, and the prince's armor had been stripped of its outer plates to better channel the magic. Before the final words could be spoken, Paraxis shifted where he lay, his great head lowering toward the fire, his eyes, molten gold and full of strange light, fixed on the prince. "Wait!" The dragon rumbled softly. Before you are sealed in stillness, there is something I must tell you. Prince Alarion paused, one gauntlet half buckled. What is it? Paraxis's breath came slow and deep, the smoke curling upward like the memory of a storm. While I slept last night, I dreamed, and in that dream I was given an idea, an absolutely wonderful idea. Prince Alarion blinked, surprised. A dream? From you? A low, amused sound rolled from the dragon's chest. Even dragons dream, though not as mortals do. Our dreams are echoes of the world's memory. Sometimes they are nothing but fragments of flame and shadow. But this one was clear, bright, and full of purpose. It felt as though the world itself wished me to remember. He turned his gaze toward the horizon. I am but 1,500 years old, young by the reckoning of my kind. Yet even in my youth, I have heard the stories whispered by the elder worms, of a time when dragons filled the skies like stars. We were not rare, not solitary. The world was alive with our kind. He paused, the firelight glinting across his scales. That was before the great calamity. Thousands of years ago, 10 kingdoms ruled these lands. Each was mighty in its own way. One of steel, one of sorcery, one of faith, another of knowledge. Their rulers learned magics that could bend the very bones of the earth. They built wonders beyond imagining. But power breeds hunger. The kings grew greedy, then fearful, then vengeful. They turned their spells upon one another. The wars that followed burned the world. The sky itself caught fire, and the seas boiled. The 10 kingdoms fell, and from their ashes rose the 5 realms that now remain. The world was nearly undone. The prince listened in silence, his expression grave. And your dream showed you this? Paraxis nodded slowly. Yes, but more. I remembered a labyrinth, hidden in the mountains near the sea, no more than 2 days' hard ride from here. Once it was a kingdom, proud and radiant. Now it is stone and ruin. The labyrinth, 50 levels deep, carved by hands long vanished. To my knowledge, no one has ever reached its heart. The old songs say it was built to contain something, not to protect it. In my dream, I felt it pulsing, alive, as though it still breathes with the same power that nearly destroyed the world. Prince Alarion's eyes narrowed. The same power Mary Bright seeks. Perhaps, Paraxis said, or perhaps something older still. The dream felt wonderful in the truest sense. Not merely beautiful, but filled with wonder. It was as though the world itself whispered, "Remember this." The prince looked down at the glowing runes, then back to the dragon. When I return from the capital, he said quietly, we will ride for that place. If the labyrinth holds the truth of what's stirring, we must find it before he does. Paraxis's eyes gleamed, the fire within them flaring brighter. Then it is decided. When your duty to your realm is done, we shall seek the mountain by the sea. Perhaps there we will find the reason the gods have stirred again. Thalen cleared his throat softly, the magic around him humming. My prince, the spell is ready. Alarion nodded once, then turned back to the dragon. Hold to that dream, Paraxis. When I wake, we'll follow it. Paraxis lowered his head until his golden eye filled the prince's vision. I will remember every detail, he said. And when you wake, the path will still be waiting. The dragon drew back, his voice lowering to a rumble. Now sleep, little prince. The sky awaits, and the world's old heart begins to stir. Alarion nodded once. "Do it," he said, as he turned to Captain Lysandra, who just arrived. "Continue to send scouts out to continue to look at the lands. Make sure creatures of evil do not call upon us, and be ready for my return." Archmage Thalen raised his hands, the runes on his rings flaring to life. The air thickened, humming with restrained power. "When you awake, you will be home, my lord," he murmured, and spoke words that were of an older tongue. Rough, loud, and still, the words of stasis enveloped the prince in a light of blue and gold. His breath slowed, then ceased. His eyes closed, his body stiffening as his life force condensed into stillness. When the light faded, he stood like a statue of marble and steel, beautiful, unyielding, and impossibly heavy. "By the gods!" one of the soldiers gasped. "He weighs a ton." "More," Archmage Thalen said grimly. "Help me lift him." It took 4 men straining with all their strength to move the prince. Their boots dug into the earth, muscles trembling as they carried him toward Paraxis. The dragon lowered himself, scales grinding softly against the ground. "Lay him here," Archmage Thalen instructed, "flat against the ridge of Paraxis's neck." When they managed to position him, Archmage Thalen pressed his palms to the dragon's scales and began to chant. The runes flared, their light racing up his arms and spilling across the prince's body. Where Alarion's armor met Paraxis's scales, the light fused, softly at first, then with a deep, resonant hum. The prince sank slightly into the dragon's hide, not piercing it, but merging with it, bound by the spell's invisible force. "It is done," Thalen said, his voice hoarse. "He will not fall." Paraxis flexed his wings, testing the weight. "He feels as though he has become part of me," he rumbled. "Strange magic, but strong." Thalen nodded, fastening his own tether beside the prince. "I will ride with him, to maintain the wards." Paraxis's molten eyes softened. "You mortals burn bright for such fleeting lives," he murmured. "Very well. Hold fast, Archmage. The sky does not forgive weakness." He crouched low, wings spreading wide. The soldiers stepped back, shielding their faces from the heat. "Then let us see," Paraxis growled, "if the heavens still remember mercy." With a thunderous beat of his wings, the dragon rose into the air. The campfire vanished below, swallowed by shadow. The wind howled, the world fell away, and the dawn broke across the horizon in a blaze of gold. Thalen clung to the dragon's scales, his wards shimmering against the biting cold. Beside him, the prince slept in perfect stillness, bound by light and will. Above them, the clouds opened like a sea of silver flame, and Paraxis roared into the rising sun. The Dawn Guard stood together, mouth open, as the great dragon flew in circles around their camp, large swaths in the air. They saw the mage on his back waving at them as the dragon prepared to climb higher. Sir Sage and Sir Craig both looked at each other in wonder. Sir Craig spoke last, "And people say we are the crazy ones." They watched as the great dragon began to climb higher and higher, until they could no longer see it in the great distance.